The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 46. The Midrim. Before I discuss the war-torn Midrim in particular, it is necessary to note the unique features of the cluster of domains known as the Stellar Archipelago. The constituent domains of most clusters are linked more tightly to one another than to the world as a whole. It is a relatively easy thing to travel from Sanguinia to Vostokov to Arendelle, and a far more delicate matter to travel from any of those frozen lands to, say, Barovia. The nature of the Stellar Archipelago is so radically different that I hesitate to call it a cluster at all. On the one hand, the realms within have a shared history and culture, much more so than any other cluster I have seen, and I had the sense that, had the mists ever lifted, they would be geographically connected as well. Sailing from an island in the mid-rim to an island in the outer rim, for instance, would have been a simple matter if the borders had been clear. The mists, however, are the key to the unusual character of the cluster. It is slightly more challenging than usual to journey between the Stellar Archipelago and domains beyond it, but it is almost impossible to travel from one of its regions to another. The mistways are treacherous, either leading directly back into the domain from which one came, or depositing one in the Sea of Sorrows, or Davy Jones' Locker, or some other ocean. Nor can one simply avoid the issue by traveling from, say, the mid-rim to the Locker to the outer rim. Those who attempt this often find that the capricious mists simply return them to the region they originally left. Only a handful of skillful and daring smugglers and pirates have managed to chart the dangerous mistways between the regions, and they guard those paths jealously. My own guide suspects that the Imperium, which I will detail in a later report, would prevent such travel if they became aware of it, making these paths some of the most privileged information in the cluster. For that reason, in order to complete my survey, I managed with some difficulty to locate and join a crew of thieves whose current scheme would take them throughout the archipelago. This did, unfortunately, involve aiding them in their criminal endeavors, but the price that they demanded to be a mere passenger aboard the Archangel was one that I believe even my patron would have found eye-watering, and Dr. Afra's knowledge of the mistways was a rare enough commodity that I had no room to haggle. With those arrangements made, I set out to study the Midrim, where for time out of mind a brutal civil war has spread like fire across the archipelago. The Lord. For years, the Artificer War has raged between the Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Islands, and there are none in the Midrim who have been left unscathed. The army of the Republic has found itself cut off from the capital city of Coruscant, although they still receive magical communications from their leader, Chancellor Palpatine. I will detail my suspicions concerning this curious exception to the fractured nature of the archipelago later. The Confederacy, also called the Separatists, has no such trouble, and while any alliance founded upon the individual freedoms of its member states will be somewhat contentious, they have largely united behind a man named Count Dooku, a name which, I am told, is quite dignified in the original Serenian. Dooku was once one of the Jedi, an order of holy warriors unique to the Midrim. These clerics, paladins, and monks are dedicated to maintaining peace and order. Having thoroughly enmeshed themselves in politics and worldly power, they now treat peace and order as synonymous with the Republic, and have become little more than an especially pious police force. This was all well and good when the Republic upheld its lofty ideals. However, as the system inevitably fell to corruption, and the senators became more interested in furthering their own designs than in caring for the people they had sworn to protect, Dooku became disillusioned by the Jedi's roles as the hounds of unscrupulous masters. He defected from both the Order and the Republic, aspiring to create a new government free from their rule. I would have been tempted to place my sympathies firmly with Dooku had I not seen his handiwork and that of his new bedfellows. In order to effectively rebel against the Republic, the Confederacy needed money and other resources. Further, while many of the Separatist islands had legitimate grievances against the Republic, others simply chafed at having any external check on their greed and ambition. The Confederacy, therefore, is largely at the command of its wealthiest and most rapacious member nations. Whatever exploitation the Republic may have visited upon its citizens, the Confederacy has exceeded them. All of this is common knowledge in the Midrim. However, I uncovered an additional piece of information known only to those familiar with the teachings and history of the Jedi. Dooku did not merely defect from the Jedi Order. He embraced an ancient, long-abandoned infernalist path known as the Sith heresy. I did not know at first whether he had simply adopted the precepts of the Sith or actively engaged in infernal bargains. Further investigation, however, made clear the depths to which Dooku has sunk in order to obtain an empty mockery of his goals. The land. The Midrim is entirely defined by the Artificer War, which takes its name from the soldiers that both sides employ. Make no mistake, there are humanoids in both armies, but the lion's share of their troops were crafted, not born. The Confederacy employs a seemingly endless legion of Warforged, the construction of which has led to more destruction of their land and oppression of their people than the Republic could ever dream of inflicting. There must always be more mines tearing into the bowels of the earth, more foundries belching poisonous smoke into the skies, and more laborers to toil in those mines and foundries, whether they choose to do so or not. The Republic, meanwhile, has employed fleshcrafters from the island of Kamino to make use of the war's most abundant and self-renewing resource: corpses. The Kaminoans are not necromancers. The army of the Republic is composed not of undead, but of reborn, intelligent but programmed for obedience. Only the wealthiest citizens of the Republic can afford the fee to have their dead loved ones buried or cremated instead of shipped to Kamino, and the island's location is a closely guarded secret to prevent the Confederacy from cutting off the army at its knees. Beyond these armies, much of the region is filled with the same horrors of any war, both appalling in their brutality and banal in their similarity to every war that has come before or will come after. Non-combatants are killed, islands are exploited for resources by both their own leaders and the occupying armies that may conquer them, atrocities are committed in the hope that they will end the war and prevent the need for further atrocities. Given the history between Darkon and Falkovnia, I hardly need to elaborate on the nature of such conflict. There is one other unique aspect of this war that I cannot confirm until a future report, but that, if true, is deeply disturbing. One of Afra's crew, a particularly loquacious warforged who kept idly speculating on what it would be like to exsanguinate me, made an offhand reference to Emperor Palpatine. Afra immediately silenced him, reminding him that we don't use that name here. She refused to answer any of my questions about the name and advised me that speaking it in mixed company was an excellent way to find myself at the bottom of the ocean. If Chancellor Palpatine, leader of the Republic, is also the ruler of the Imperium, it suggests that the Jedi and the other soldiers who pledged their loyalty to him are dupes, pawns in some game that they can never hope to understand, with a player who has no concern for their well-being. They believe themselves to be defending a democracy, however corrupt it may be, when in fact they are conquering more lands for a tyrant. This would also explain why Palpatine is the only one who seems able to communicate easily across domains, and why the Imperium controls the Mistways so tightly, for if his despotic designs became common knowledge, the entire army of the Republic would desert overnight. Dread possibilities. As mentioned, I paid for my passage through the Stellar Archipelago by promising to assist Dr. Afra in retrieving an artifact of dubious legal provenance for a buyer. The artifact was located on the remote Outer Rim island of Dathomir, but Dooku had apparently had extensive dealings with Dathomir in the past, and a map of the island was stored in a separatist vault. Afra was adamant that we retrieve the map before attempting the job, for Dathomir is home to enough dangers that to wander aimlessly through its swamps and jungles is to invite a variety of colorful and unpleasant deaths. So we traveled to the barren, rocky island of Geonosis to recover the map. As rich in mineral resources as it is devoid of arable land, Geonosis is the beating heart of the Confederacy's Warforged production, with hives of Thrykeen nesting in the caverns that honeycomb its mountains. We were able to gain access to the island without much difficulty, as supply ships constantly traveled to and from its foundries. Locating and breaking into the vault itself was more challenging, largely because of the amount of time we spent dissuading Afra's autognome companion from solving every problem with explosives, but we eventually access the vault. I relate this not because I believe my patron has a particular interest in either maps of Dathomir or my methods of acquiring them, but because of what else I found in the vault. While my companions searched for the map, I used Eldritch Sight and found a secret compartment protected by a glyph of warding. Of course, this compartment was begging to be opened, so I dispelled the glyph and set to examining the compartment's contents. It was clear from a few moments of study that it belonged to Count Dooku and was used for items too sensitive for the Geonosian's eyes. While the journal within used a cipher that I was unable to decrypt, although I haven't closed it, as I have no intention of being anywhere near the Midrim when he discovers its theft, I also found various arcane writings related to the summoning and binding of fiends, with the name of a specific archdevil, Sidious. It seems that Dooku has, in fact, formed some sort of infernal pact. It is unsurprising that the Confederacy has taken a path so counter to the one he envisioned, for such bargains tend to grant only the illusion of one's desires. Parting thoughts. I was unable to gain access to Dooku himself, which is no surprise. An easily accessible rebel leader is an easily assassinated rebel leader. His story, however, is that of so many other revolutionaries who attempts to usher in a new era that promises to be even more oppressive than the one before. An empty, joyless victory that doubtless delights his infernal patron. If Palpatine is, in fact, the tyrant of the Imperium as well as the Chancellor of the Republic, he may even have made his own bargain with Sidious for that power, making the whole of this barbarous war nothing more than the fiendish equivalent of a child playing with toy soldiers. I'm not looking forward to visiting the next region of the Stellar Archipelago, but I am relieved to leave Geonosis specifically, as I have gotten rocks and sand in nearly every article of clothing I own. I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. I hope that on the next island we visit, everything's soft and smooth. Regards, D.
Wars fought between the rulers of these misty realms are often fruitless. Drakov's abysmal attempts against Darkon do little more than provide me with additional zombies I may utilize in the defense of my people, though I would hardly equate my continual swatting away of this willfully ignorant fly as war, even if the little mercenary insists upon it. Civil wars are more commonplace, but despite the persistent efforts of those involved, it is the nature of these lands to remain stagnant. It is a rare event indeed, in which a conflict changes anything of note. The Artificer Wars are no different. The Confederacy is as corrupt as the Republic it rebels against. The Jedi are too secure in their own self-righteous perspective and power to uncover the true influence behind their own actions, resulting in their ranks often turning a blind eye to the Republic's corruption. It is no coincidence that Dooku left the Jedi Council after a particularly brutal conflict. No doubt he discovered a grain of that truth. Count Dooku's story is hardly unique. He sought perfection and purity in a world where no such sanctity exists. Instead, he discovered the rot at the core of the Jedi creed and sought nobler methods to achieve his desires. Perhaps if he had let his emotions cool before acting, he would not have summoned an infernal entity to aid his cause. I have no doubt that his rash actions will lead to his ultimate downfall. When summoning an infernal entity, one must exhibit extreme caution. It is the nature of fiends to deceive and seduce until the servant becomes the master.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at darklordaslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.